Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome back to another video game review. In today's review, I want to talk about SD Gundam Battle Alliance. And if you remember watching my impressions video, I talked about playing the demo of the game, and it made me want to play it, and I was very interested in it, you know? It definitely was something that I thought could be very fun to play, and especially since I do like the Gundam series. Record, I'm not as big of a fan of a Gundam as most people are, and especially nowadays, but that's beside the point. The point is that I wanted to try this out. And I did. So what I thought about it. Well, let's talk about the gameplay first, as that's actually the easiest one to talk about, because the gameplay is fun, it's very entertaining, and depending on if you finally do get to unlock a new Gundam and stuff like that, and experiment with the combat moves and stuff, it can be a unique experience, I feel like. It can be a very unique experience. It has this kind of like combo action feel. Like, it's kind of hard to explain it, but you got two forms of attacks. You've got the normal basic hack and slash attack, but then you've also got this either blasters or dash moves, or depending on how the Gundam is, the different blaster moves, or aerial range moves as they're called, different moves that you can use and stuff. And the cool thing is that it very well done, in my opinion, flows well into combat. Depending on how you go about in combat, depending on how versatile you get, how creative you get with the combat, it can be really good, in my opinion. In fact, really, in my personal opinion, the combat's probably the best part about the game. It's just, whenever you get to a Pacific Gundam, and you start to kind of experiment with the different ones and stuff like that, and experiment with their movesets and stuff, it could be a really fun game, I feel like. It definitely feels like it could be really fun and entertaining, but I feel like about halfway through the game, I started to feel like as though as if this game could have been kind of like an SD Gundam Dynasty Warriors. I feel like the way the combat feels, it feels like it should have had more enemies on the screen. It feels like it needed more enemies. And maybe I might be wrong, maybe I might be overthinking it, but it feels like there could have been more enemies placed on the field and stuff like that, and they just didn't think to and stuff. I don't know, there's something to that, but I'll let you be the judge of that. That's not my biggest concern, however, though, when it comes to this game. Again, the combat's great. I love the combat. But I have some, one would argue, some minor issues with it. And I want to talk about them. So let's talk about the first minor issue. And that is that the game is very grindy. And that says a lot when you consider the games that I play, you know, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. Most RPGs that I play are grindy anyway, so what makes this so grindy? Well, it's a two-phaser. So the first part is basically where you gather blueprints in order to make the Gundam itself. And depending on the Gundam, depending on how they set up the blueprints, depends on the likelihood of you being able to gather the blueprints you need in order to build the Gundam. And most often than most, you're going to get a Gundam relatively quickly within like the first or two missions. But there are other Gundams in which where they require 2, sometimes even 3 blueprints in order to make them. And depending on that particular blueprint, it can take either 3 to upwards to 6 times being able to go through the mission in order to get that number of blueprints. So say for example you go through this one mission and you beat it and it loads up the blueprint that you've unlocked and it tells you how many you need. It'll be like 2 out of 4 or 2 out of 6 depending on what it is and stuff. That means you have to go back into the mission and replay it in the hopes that you do get to see it drop and get that blueprint that you need in order to complete that bar. You have to beat that particular mission that many times in order to unlock all the blueprints that you need available for that Gundam. Or Gundams in this case. It goes a little bit further than that, I'm afraid. It's not just a matter of like, oh, well this one mission has all the blueprints I need. Nah. There'll be some Gundams where it'll have 2 to 3 blueprints, but they're in different directories, or different chapters as I like to call them, because Yes, there are chapters. Each chapter has a number of missions, and each mission has either a break mission or a true mission. The break mission is where the timeline is broken up and different Gundams are intertwining in a timeline that they ordinarily shouldn't be in. And your job is to go through the mission, go through the break, and collect that fragment that shouldn't be there, and then correct it, thus unlocking the true mission, which is where the true events that take place in the universe itself. So there's that. There's also the fact that there's another subcategory that you unlock later on in the game called Chaos Missions. You go through the Chaos Missions, go through the true missions, with the exception of one small factor, and that is that there is usually one random break that happens inside that particular mission. And you have to find that break and beat that Gundam, and thus collect the blueprints from that specific Gundam in order to collab with the other blueprints that you're collecting for that specific Gundam as well. So yeah, there's that. There's also the fact that with these Chaos missions, depending on when they are available, depends on if they are triggered or not. So these Chaos missions are not triggered all the time. You can go through these Chaos missions anytime you want to, but the only way you're going to be able to unlock that specific Gundam and collect that specific blueprint is if it is triggered. It will alert you when they are triggered, but not all of them will be triggered at the same time. Obviously not, of course. They are randomly selected at times. So depending on what blueprint you're looking for, depending on what Gundam you're trying to create, depends on what missions you have to go through, and the timing in which the Chaos missions can be achieved. Now, if you went through these Chaos missions and grinded for a specific key fragment, you can then use these keys in order to trigger that specific mission, so where that way you can go in there. So there's two ways you can unlock that Chaos mission to where you can trigger it, and that's to either go through it whenever it is triggered, to which it's free, or if it's not available, you go through that mission, and if you have enough keys, which is usually 4 at most, if you have enough keys, it will automatically trigger automatically. So, yeah. Therefore, it's a little bit grindy at times. It's not awful, but at times it does feel time consuming, depending on how far you get into the game, and depending on how many Gundams you've already unlocked it by this point. Speaking of which, there's also the fact that this game features a level system. Yes, a level system. So in other words, you have to level up your Gundams. So basically, for every Gundam you get, they start off at level 1. And you have to boost up their stats based on either their HP, their boost, their melee, or their range. And you have to upgrade it in order to level them up and stuff like that, which requires a number of capital, which is the game's currency, in order to upgrade them. Thing is, imagine doing that for 10 or so Gundams, and every new Gundam you get starts at level 1. Therefore, you have to level it up to catch up to whatever current Gundam you have leveled up at the time. Now imagine that going forward 3 more levels. What I mean is that there are 3 sub-caps that you have to go through. There's the level 15 cap, level 30 cap, and then level 50 cap. Yes, this game gets a little ridiculous at times. So, you go through a period in which where you've already upgraded them to a point of 15. Then you have to have a level capper unlocked to where you can unlock its level. Then level it up again to uncap it again. I mean, you can uncap them infinite amount of times, but you still have to upgrade them regardless to get to a certain point, to where they are violently useful for your current missions that you're on right now. So this can be a tedious process, and literally, like on the last 2 directories that I was in, I literally just said to myself, screw it, I'm just going to play it on easy, so where that way my lowest level Gundams can remotely play through the hardest difficulties and not have to struggle, you know? It's like, yeah, I'm in the later missions, so obviously the Gundams are going to be higher level compared to some of my newer Gundams that I've just unlocked. Therefore, if I want to try out any new Gundams, I would have to have them leveled up to a certain point to where they can be remotely usable and play it on easy mode to where I can try them out and see how they are and stuff. And I've done this throughout the rest of the time that I was playing the game. And it was really fun. I really got to experience a number of different Gundams, and they were all really fun to play as and stuff. The ones that I was able to unlock, of course. I still haven't unlocked every one of them. I think by this point I've unlocked at least 40. There's more than 50. And there's probably even more so what was all the DLC content. You can see where this is going now. So imagine you have the base game, then you have the DLC, but then there's another layer to this. Yes, there's another layer to this shit. So, I beat the game. I beat the missions, the remaining missions on easy. And the final mission, the final boss specifically, oh dear Lord Almighty, that took a little bit out of me. I had to pick out my best Gundam in order to try to remotely take it down, which took at least 3 times for me after I selected my main Gundam that I played throughout the entire time. And I was just like, holy shit, that was nuts. And then it told me, oh, there's another difficulty selection known as hard mode. If you want to get hard mode, you have to beat all of the missions on normal mode. And I'm like, dear merciful God, what? So not only that, you also have another difficulty. And here's what's interesting. Why would you want to go through another layer of difficulty? Well, there are 3 Gundams that you can still unlock in the game, but they can only be unlocked on hard mode. So let's see, let's count the ways, shall we? You have the base missions, which is the breaks and the true missions. Then you have the chaos missions, which there's usually 1 chaos mission in every mission, depending. You know, sometimes they're not there, but for the most part, the majority of the missions do have a chaos mission that you have to go through. Each mission, depending, can unlock up to 2, sometimes even 3 different Gundams, and each Gundam has a maximum of either 2 or 3 blueprints that needs to be attained, which depending, they also have either upwards to 2 to 6 blueprints that needs to be collected at a time. Then you also have the fact that there are some Gundams that are only available on a harder difficulty after you beat the game. Then if it ain't that, there's also the possibilities of the DLC. I'm talking about the DLC like as though as if I haven't played it, because I didn't purchase any, because when I looked at some of the DLC, I was shocked to find out something else. And that is that there might be microtransactions. I may be completely wrong, I would have to look back at it again, but there might be microtransactions to where you can buy to level your Gundams real quickly, to uncap them real quickly, so on and so forth. So partially made me think that this was built with the ideal of you possibly going into microtransactioning. It's hard to recommend this game. I'm going to say that right now. It's going to be hard to recommend this game. But it's even going to be harder to recommend it because of the Gundam variants. Now, I haven't talked about the Gundam variants, mostly because I was afraid to talk about it. So, now I'm going to talk about it. Whenever I was playing through some of the missions, I was very concerned with the lack of Gundam Wing and G Gundam. Now, there are other Gundam series that are also lacking as well. But there are also a couple Gundams that aren't lacking, like Gundam Seed, Unicorn Gundam, and then of course the original Gundam. There's no lacking in those areas. But then you look at some of the other Gundams, like I said, Wing Gundam and G Gundam, where there's usually the most unique design Gundams, but they don't use all of them. So it's like, where's Death Sight Gundam? Where's Rose Gundam? Where's any of them? And you don't even get to play as any of the bigger Gundams. Like, for example, the Dark Gundam. You don't get to play as that. But it's one of those things where I'm just like, so let me see if I get this straight. We get the main Gundams at the very least. We get the main Gundams. But what about other Gundams? So it kind of sucks the fact that you don't get to play as all of your other favorite Gundams, you know? I get they can't do that for every game. They can't do that for everything, you know? The series has had a long history, therefore, trying to fill in the gap of every single Gundam would be physically impossible, but at least have the main set, you know what I mean? At least have the main set. It's not as good as it could be. The main gameplay is excellent, but being able to unlock all of the Gundams, being able to use them, being able to have them leveled up to where that way they can do all the basic missions and stuff like that, is a very grindy, and it definitely feels blatantly purposely for microtransactions, and that's unfortunate. So, for this rating, I'm going to have to give it a 3 out of 5 stars, just in terms of being able to unlock all of the Gundams and stuff like that. Can feel very tedious, and depending on which one's your favorite Gundam, you're going to be working for it, and I do mean you're going to be working to attain that Pacific Gundam, depending on which one it is. In some cases, it'll be easier. In other cases, it will be very taxing, and you probably won't be able to unlock all the pieces to make that Gundam until the very end of the game. So, yeah, have fun playing through the story mode. Oh wait, depending on who you are, you may be annoyed at the fact that it's only Japanese dub. No English dub whatsoever. There are English subtitles, so you can read the subtitles. That's not a big deal in my opinion. But it sucks the fact that there are no English dub voice actors. But yeah, my biggest thing though is that I hope that if I do decide to dive into it, that the DLCs will be either cheaper or there's like an all-in-one package deal type thing, you know. Hopefully it will be betterly organized and maybe they'll be better available and stuff like that. Maybe I might dive back into it and have a little bit better of experience. I will also say too that based on how the trophies are, this is definitely not a game worth platinuming in my opinion. It's bad enough that there are 2 trophies that can only be attained through online mode. Yes, this game features online mode, but really, depending on who you are, you may not even want to do online mode. You may just prefer just playing in single player, and you still have a fun enough time by yourself, so I don't know. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.